Hello, my name is Roger Claxton and welcome to this series of bite-sized talks entitled Poor on the Moor. The talks are in segments and based on the records in the Widecombe archive and the project that commenced in 2011 to digitise and catalogue them. The talks are based on the contents of the recently published book Welfare in Widecombe 1700 to 1900, written by me. You can get a copy through our website widecombe-in-the-moor.com/welfare and various other outlets. There are also e-book versions available. This is the 7th segment of the Poor on the Moor series of talks and explores the settlement system by which people were returned to the parish in which they had legal settled status. So all parishioners belonged to a parish and were the responsibility of that parish. If they, for example, travelled to another parish for work and then fell on hard times and had to seek relief, then they could be returned to their settled parish. This only really became an issue if they sought poor relief. The return to the original parish required an investigation and proof of the place of rightful settlement and involved interviews and investigations to determine the true position. So we'll start with an example of just the end result. This is the case of William Hannaford and family from 1842 and their removal from Totnes to Widecombe. There are several documents relating to this case which can be found in the archive. Either search for William Hannaford or for A052.383 to see all the documents of this case. We'll just start with the removal order and I'll just read you through what it says. The information and complaint of Charles Edwards and Robert Worth, churchwardens, and Joseph Combe, Robert Gill, Thomas Parrott, and William Hannaford, overseers of the poor of Totnes in the county of Devon, unto us, two of Her Majesty's Justices of the Peace in and for the borough of Totnes, one being of the quorum, who saith that William Hannaford, labourer, Anne his wife, and John Hannaford, his child, aged about 20 months, have come to reside in the parish of Totnes, late of the parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor, not having obtained any legal settlement there, and have become chargeable thereto, and that the last legal settlement of the said William Hannaford and his wife and John his child is in the said parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor in the said county of Devon, and that they ought by law to be sent thereunto, and they pray that justice may be done in the premises. And then it's signed and dated, etc. So that's the removal order document itself. We then move on and look at another document in the same case, and this is the instruction to Totnes and Widecombe. And again, I'll read this one. So this is to the churchwardens and overseers of the poor of the parish of Totnes, to convey, and to the churchwardens and overseers of the poor of the parish of Widecombe, to receive and obey. Whereas complaint hath been made by you, the churchwardens and overseers of the poor of the parish of Totnes, aforesaid, unto us whose hands and seals are hereunto set, etc., etc., that William Hannaford, labourer, Anne his wife, and John Hannaford his child, aged about 20 months, lately intruded themselves into your parish of Totnes, there to inhabit as parishioners contrary to the laws relative to the settlement of the poor, and have become actually chargeable to your said parish of Totnes. We therefore, upon due examination and inquiry made into the premises aforesaid, and on the oath of the said William Hannaford, and of Josiah Bindon, Betsy Hannaford, and Mary Stankham, all three of whom were interviewed in this case, taken before us the said justices, and also upon due consideration had of the premises, do find and adjudge the same to be true. And we do also adjudge that the last place of legal settlement of them, the said William Hannaford and his wife and John their child, was and is in the parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor. These are therefore in Her Majesty's name to order and require you, the churchwardens and overseers of the poor of the parish of Totnes, aforesaid, that you, some or one of you, do forthwith remove and convey them, the said William Hannaford and his wife and John their child, from your said parish of Totnes to the parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor, and there deliver to the churchwardens and overseers of the poor, or some or one of them, there, together with this our order or a true copy thereof, at the same time showing them the original. And you, the churchwardens of the poor of the parish of Widecombe, are likewise hereby required to receive and provide for them, the said William Hannaford and his wife, and John his child, as inhabitants of your said parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor, until from thence they shall be discharged by due course of law. And then it's signed as before. Okay, we will now show one example of an examination. There are above 100 in the archive for you to study. They are all catalogued with names, dates and places, which provides a useful search tool. This is the examination of Anne French and provides an example of the detail that was gone into. It looks from what is said as if Anne was never officially found out, as we have understood it from the segment on the apprenticeship system. Okay, let's go through this document. This is the examination of Anne French, at present residing in the parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor, single woman, as to her last legal place of settlement, taken on oath before us, etc., etc. I am about 18 years of age, and was born in the parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor, aforesaid, where my parents resided, and which was their lawful place of settlement, as I have been informed and believe. I lived with my parents in Widecombe-in-the-moor, aforesaid, until I was about 9 years of age, when I went to live with Mr. Sherwell in the parish of Woodland in the said county, farmer, with whom I lived 6 years. No agreement was ever made with him, to my knowledge, as to what time I should stay or what I should receive for my services, and he found me board and lodging and clothes only. After leaving Mr. Sherwell's, I went to live with Mrs. Reed, his daughter, in the parish of Holme in the said county. No agreement was made with her as to what I was to receive or what time I was to stay, and I lived with Mrs. Reed in Holme about 2 years, being found board and lodging and clothing. I then lived with Mr. William Smurden at Bowdley in Ashburton for 9 months. I then went to live with Mr. Stadden, a farmer, in the parish of St. Mary Church in the said county. I first agreed to serve him a month on trial at the wages of 1 shilling and 6pence per week, and my board and lodging. Nothing was said at the first month's end, and I continued to live with Mr. Stadden for 12 months, receiving the above wages. I left Mr. Stadden about 2 months since, and I am now chargeable to the parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor, where I am now residing. And then this is written in different hand and is quite difficult to make out. I lived home with my mother before going, we think, Mr. Smurden's, about a month or 2, and after leaving his service, lived with my mother a month or 6 weeks. So there we go. That gives an idea of what Anne went through in her young life. So let's move on to another document in the case of Anne French. This time it's her mother who's being examined, Sarah French. It was normal for all relevant parties to be examined, just to make sure that the facts all tied up. And although the employers themselves were not generally examined, that could happen if there were discrepancies. So let's look at this document. So this is the examination of Sarah French, etc., 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 who on her oath aforesaid saith, the above named Anne French is my daughter by my late husband Thomas French, deceased. He was born in the parish of Widecombe-in-the-moor aforesaid, which was my husband's lawful place of settlement. When she was about 9 years old, she went to live with Mr. Sherwell of the parish of Woodland in the said county, farmer. Mr. Sherwell applied to me or my husband at the time to know if we had a girl to put out. We said that we had, and Mr. Sherwell agreed to take her. No agreement whatever was made with Mr. Sherwell what the girl was to receive or what time she was to serve, and she left our house alone to go to a farm of Mr. Sherwell's in the parish of Holme, from whence she went to where Mr. Sherwell lived in Woodland aforesaid, and she lived there with him 6 years for her board, lodging and clothes. During this time neither my husband nor myself found or gave her anything to my knowledge. and then it's signed. Note that Sarah French is signing with her mark, as did Anne French in her document. Well, that's worthy of some sort of thought and ponderings to what happened to these young children in those days. But for us, we must leave it there. This is the end of the segment on removal orders, which I hope has given you some idea of how this removal order system worked. Please stay with us for the next segment, which discusses other welfare provisions that were made. Thank you for listening.
They'll lift me up and lay me down gently down, till I reach consecrated ground along the old Litch way. On 6 strong shoulders I will sway. Lay me down